Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
All right, and welcome back, everybody, to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. My name is Patrick Kenny, and I'm going to be the host for y'all's episode today. In today's episode, I'm going to give you all a little bit of an update so far on the games that have been played, give you like some league leaders through the games that have been played. Honestly, there really isn't that much to go on so far, but we're going to go through who the league leaders are. I figure we'll probably do this every week or every podcast for my episodes. Just give a little bit of an update to see where everybody is. Maybe give a little fantasy advice. We'll see. And in the second segment, we're going to be breaking down Fransico Lindor's contract and why the long-term deals don't work out in the long term, but you pay the player knowing that they're going to lose the value in the end of the contract. And we'll kind of look at other contracts that have sort of already been shaped like that. And then in the third segment, we're going to be talking about how different how Lindor's deal is going to, how Lindor and Tatis's deal are really going to shape the free agency market for all of the shortstops that are coming up for free agency this year. And then in the last segment, we have a little bit of a touchy subject with the All-Star game being moved out of Atlanta, and we're going to look at the reasons why, and then we're also going to sort of look at potential landing spots for the All-Star game. It has yet to be announced. So with that being said, we'll just get right into it. So far, games have been sort of kind of crazy, honestly. The Yankees lost on April 1st to the Blue Jays 3-2. And those are the only games that they have played so far, both teams. The Cleveland Indians lost to the Detroit Tigers 3-2 as well. And then the Twins lost to the Brewers in walk-off fashion on April 1st as well. The Pirates beat the Cubs, which is a little bit of a surprise. There's a lot of surprises that happened so far on really opening day. For a lot of teams, the Pirates winning is one. The Tigers beating the Indians is another one. And the Tigers and the Pirates, they're in rebuild mode. And if your team loses opening day, it's not the biggest deal in the world, and there's really no reason to freak out. But there's still the same people that always kind of freak out, see what's going on. They're like trying to figure out what is happening and why things are happening. And going next, the Atlanta Braves lost to the Phillies on April 1st as well, 3-2. On the 1st, the Dodgers lost to the Rockies by a score of 5-8. The Padres beat the Diamondbacks by a score of 7-8. The Cardinals beat the Reds in one of the worst defensive games I've seen played at shortstop in a very long time, with Suarez for the Reds not being a shortstop. They put him at shortstop, and he had 2 errors that resulted in a bunch of runs, unfortunately for Luis Castillo. The Cardinals beating the Reds 11-6. And then the Rangers lost to the Royals in a very high-scoring affair, 10-14. And then the Tampa Bay Rays beat the Marlins 1-0. The White Sox lost to the Angels on April 1st as well by a score of 3-4. The Astros beat the Athletics by a score of 8-1. And then going on to the next is the Giants losing to the Mariners. The Mariners won 8-7. And then 2 games were postponed. The Orioles and Red Sox were postponed due to rain, and the Mets and the Nationals have yet to play due to COVID-19 protocols. On Friday, April 2nd, the Orioles did beat the Red Sox in their rain delay makeup 3-0. The Tampa Bay Rays beat the Marlins, by a score of 6-4. The Dodgers came back and beat the Rockies 11-6 with Trevor Bauer doing a very good job on the mound. I believe he had like 10 strikeouts or something like that. And then the White Sox beat the Angels by a score of 12-8. The Astros beat the Athletics 9-5. And the Arizona Diamondbacks lost to the San Diego Padres by a score of 4-2. And then in the last game yesterday, the Giants beat the Mariners by a score of 6-3. So going into the standings, the Tampa Bay Rays are the only team to actually have played. The Astros and the Padres, are the only 3 teams to have a 2-0 record so far, and they are all leading their division, obviously. The Rays are a half game up on Toronto and Baltimore, who are both 1-0, and then a full game up on the Yankees and the Red Sox, who are 0-1 apiece. Every team is playing today on the day of recording, April 3rd. And the AL Central, the Detroit Tigers, the Kansas City Royals, and the Chicago White Sox, all have 1 win. The White Sox do have a loss, so the Royals and the Tigers are a half game up on the White Sox, and then Cleveland and Minnesota are 0-1, so they are a full game back behind the Tigers and the Royals. Going out to the AL West, the Astros are 2-0, leading the division by a game, with the Angels and Seattle both going 1-1. They're a game and a half. The Astros are a game and a half up on the Texas Rangers, who are 0-1, and then Oakland is 0-2, obviously losing both of their games so far to the Houston Astros, so they're then 2 games back. Going out to the NL East is the Phillies with a 1-0 record. Atlanta is 0-1, and Miami is 0-2. The Mets and the Nationals have yet to play a game, because the Nationals are dealing with some COVID-19 protocols and a few positive tests as well. So the Phillies are technically a half game up on the Mets and the Nationals so far. And then you go out to the NL Central. The Milwaukee Brewers, Pittsburgh Pirates, and the St. Louis Cardinals are all tied for first with 1-0. All 3 of them are a full game up on the Chicago Cubs and the Cincinnati Reds, who are both 0-1. Going out to the NL West, the Padres have a stranglehold, we'll call it. They are 2-0 so far, and every team, the Arizona Diamondbacks are 0-2 at the bottom of the division, 2 games back, and the Rockies, Dodgers, and Giants are all 1-1 with a game back behind the Padres. So we're just going to look at some stats right here. I'm going to go over just a few stats to see how everybody is doing so far. And just remember, everybody, that this is a very new season. So if your team is, if you're a fan of the Yankees or the Cubs or the Reds, don't freak out just yet. There's nothing that's actually too worrisome just yet, especially like if you're an Oakland fan. There's really nothing to worry about yet. We still have either 160 or 161 baseball games to go. There's plenty of time for everybody to get settled back in and get into the swing of things. So there's really nothing to just freak out about just yet. So far in average, the leader is Jorge Soler, who is batting 1,000. He has played in one game, has had 2 at-bats, and has 2 hits. He also has 2 walks as well. Eric Hosmer is the second leader. He is hitting .857. He has played in 2 games with 7 at-bats, 3 hits, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 1 walk, and he did strike out 1 time. And then you have Paul Goldschmidt, who had 5 at-bats in his 1 game against the Reds. He has had 4 hits, 2 doubles, no strikeouts, 1 RBI, and then an .800 average. And Will Smith and Toscar Hernandez, a right fielder for Toronto, they are both tied for 4th with a .750 average, both of them having 4 at-bats, 3 hits. Will Smith has 2 doubles and 2 RBIs. Hernandez only has 1, but he does have a home run to his belt as well. And Hernandez also has a strikeout. And then Michael Brantley, Clint Frazier, Joey Gallo, Gary Sanchez are all tied for 6th with a .667 average. There's really nothing to go on here just yet, just because the season's so young. There's really if Eric Hosmer strikes out or goes 0 for 4 next game, he'll be hitting around the top 25 of players of the league and drop from number 2. If baseball is weird like that, and especially when you have so many you have such little at bats, your average fluctuates quite a bit. If he strikes out in his first at bat on Saturday, the day I'm recording this, his average is going to drop over 100 points. But if he then goes and hits twice, and gets 2 more hits, then his average will be higher than what it was before he had struck out. So it's going to be the averages fluctuate quite a bit for the first first quite a bit of the season. But the league leaders in home runs so far: Eric Hosmer, Alex Bregman, Evan Longoria, Ketel Marte, Austin Meadows, and Buster Posey are all tied for first. All of those players have played 2 games, and they all have 2 home runs. And then Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson, Charlie Blackmon, Michael Brantley, Byron Buxton, Asdrubal Cabrera, Miguel Cabrera, Dylan Carlson, Nick Castellanos, Alex Dickerson, Adam Eaton, Yuri Gurriel, Key Brian Hayes, and then the list goes on for quite a bit, actually. The next players, there are 6 players tied for first, and then there are over 30 players tied with 1 home run. That is including Pablo Sandoval, Gary Sanchez, Albert Pujols, Shohei Ohtani, Roberto Perez, Will Myers, and then a whole bunch of other players as well, like Whit Merrifield, Miguel Cabrera, like I said, is Asdrubal Cabrera, Byron Buxton. The list kind of goes on. In just hits, Michael Brantley, Eric Hosmer, and Ketel Marte are tied for first with 6. All 3 of them also have 1 strikeout, and Eric Hosmer and Michael Brantley have 1 walk. And Jose Altuve, Mookie Betts, Alex Bregman, Paul Goldschmidt, Yuli Gurriel, Evan Longoria, Gavin Lux, Trevor Story, and Justin Turner are all tied for 7th with 4 hits. Everybody except Corey Seager, Donovan Solano, and Yerman Mercedes all tied for 4th. And I would say that Yerman Mercedes is probably the most impressive out of those because they all have 5 hits, but Yerman Mercedes has played in 1 game, and Corey Seager and Donovan Solano all have played in 2 games. And Yermin Mercedes is tied for first in average as well, with hitting 1,000 at the moment. And then going to stolen bases, there are two players tied for first with Chris Owings and Mike Tauchman. Owings of Colorado, Tauchman of the Yankees. They both have 2. And then there are Byron Buxton, Wilson Contreras, Brandon Crawford, Anthony Alford, Dustin Fowler, Adam Frazier, Joey Gallo, Robbie Grossman, Ramon Lorano, Tim Costello, and Luis Robert and Gene Segura, all tied for third with 1 stolen base. Going over to strikeouts is there are some guys that are very that have struck out quite a bit so far. Johan Moncada has had 8 plate appearances, and he is 2 for 8 in those with 6 strikeouts. Then you go to Martin Maldonado of Houston, the catcher. He's had 9 at-bats. He has 5 strikeouts. Fernando Tatis, struggling so far out of the gate. He's had 8 at-bats, 1 hit, and 5 strikeouts. Then you go to Mike Yastrzemski, the right fielder for the Giants. 9 at-bats so far this season. No hits, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. And Dexter Fowler and Eduardo Escobar have both played in 2 games. Escobar having 8 hits and Fowler having 8 at-bats, and Fowler having 7. Both of them with 4 strikeouts, and there's a bunch of other guys with 4 strikeouts as well. And then Shohei Ohtani is in that as well. So is Starling Marte. They all have 4 strikeouts. Then there's a few guys with 3 strikeouts, but after that, it just kind of goes into a whole bunch of players. There's a bunch of guys that are so far just kind of struggling at the plate, and that's not uncommon to see at all early in the season. And some of those guys are going to be leading the league in strikeouts for the rest of the year. But that's okay. So we're going to go now over to the pitchers. We're going to see who has the most strikeouts. You can't really go on wins or ERA just yet, but Shane Bieber is leading the league in strikeouts with 12. Yessi Kikuchi of Seattle and Trevor Bauer are tied for second with 10 strikeouts. Garrett Cole and Max Fried are tied for fourth with 8 strikeouts. And then Blake Snell, Jesus Larazo, and Lucas Giolito are all tied as well for fourth with 8 strikeouts. I would say Blake Snell's is pretty impressive considering that Bieber went 6 innings, Trevor Bauer went 6 1/3, and Kikuchi went 6 innings. That they have those, but Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Lucas Giolito, and Jesus Larazo all pitched 5 innings, and Blake Snell pitched 4 2/3, and they all have 8 strikeouts. So I think that's kind of impressive to see who is to see who is sort of dominating still. Out of home runs given up, Marco Gonzalez of Seattle has given up 3 home runs. Trevor Bauer, Madison Bumgarner, Hugh Darvish, Jack Flaherty, Tim Hill, UC Kikuchi, and Adam Kolarek, Jesus Larazo, and David Price all have given up 2 home runs. Price's was given up in an inning and 2/3, and Adam Clark of Oakland has given up those 2 home runs in the third of an inning he pitched. Tim Hill of San Diego gave up his 2 home runs in the third of an inning that he pitched as well. But like I said, don't freak out just yet over some of these stats. Like every once in a while, some pitchers leave one over the plate, and sometimes the hitter actually just beats the pitcher. It was a good pitch by the pitcher, just better hitting. And don't freak out yet about your standings. If your team is not where you thought they'd be, there's a whole lot of baseball left to play. If you're in the NL East and one of your competitors, say you're a Phillies fan, and a couple players on the Braves get hurt, that's going to that's going to push you over the top for them. Like, that division is so competitive that that division's probably going to go until late September at the very earliest. So give us just a moment. We'll be right back in just a second with Francisco Lindor's deal, how it breaks down, and how it's going to affect the Mets in the future.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, and welcome into this segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. My name's Patrick Kenny, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about and kind of comparing Francisco Lindor's new deal to Fernando Tatis's deal, and then in the next segment, we're going to be talking about just how the free agency landscape is going to look for guys like Javier Baez and Carlos Carrasco for next year. And first, I want to talk about a little bit more about George Springer, and kind of compare it to these deals. So Springer's deal is a 6-year, $120 million deal, if I remember correctly. And if you're a team, I think that is a much better deal to make, because after that, if he's not performing after year 6, which might be likely, that he doesn't have to be re-signed by the team. I think that's a much better team-friendly deal than Francisco Lindor's. I kind of look at Lindor's as more of an Albert Pujols type of contract. So Lindor's new deal is a 10-year, $341 million deal, and an annual salary of $34.1 million, and he will earn $2.1 million as a signing bonus for every year. So he is entering his age 27 season right now, and it looks like, and he will be making a $22.3 million this year in New York at the age of 27, and then every year after that, he's going to be making $32 million as a base salary, and then a $2.1 million signing bonus, and so that means his payroll salary is $34.1 million every year from age of 28 and all the way through his age 37 season. I mean, if you're Lindor, I completely understand. He wanted to get $1 million, or he wanted to have a contract that was bigger than Fernando Tatis's deal. And Tatis's deal was $340 million, and Lindor's new deal is now $341 million. I like Tatis's deal more than I like Lindor's deal, because Tatis's deal is younger. So if you're a front office executive, and you sign Tatis is going to be entering, I want to say, his early 30s when that deal is done, whereas Lindor is going to be entering his age 37 season in his last year. So, I mean, Albert Pujols has a similar contract, I think. I believe that his deal wasn't the best deal that you could possibly have. So he signed a 10-year, $240 million deal back in I want to say 2011, and you want his contract is actually obviously it was big at the time. It's not as big anymore, but when you're paying a guy that much money, it was his deal was signed in 2012, but he will probably be retiring after this season. His contract is kind of interesting, to say the least. So when you sign a player to a deal that is that big and that long, you're signing him for the right now and for the couple years of the future. You're not signing Lindor for his age 37 season, just like the Angels aren't signing Albert Pujols for his age 41 season right now. It's definitely kind of interesting, to say the very least, just because like you have a contract that is worth a lot of money, and when Pujols signed the contract, he was 32, and he signed a 10-year deal worth an absorbent amount of money that the Angels probably should not have given him, especially considering how much winning that they have done, or lack of winning is what I probably should say right here. I think that Pujols' deal is interesting because, and I've said this quite a bit already. It's you buy him for the right now. You don't buy him for the years down the line. And I really never understood that until I started listening to David Sampson's podcast and his segment on the Lebitard show, and it actually, and his reasonings for signing, or for why people are signing, make a lot of sense, because you want to sign the guys while they're productive, and you already know that they're not going to be that productive and that good toward the end of the year, or toward the end of their contract. And that's not why you don't sign them for that. You already know what's going to happen, but you're trying to win right now, and that's why you sign these deals. So Steve Cohen is kind of, I really like Steve Cohen as an owner. He engages a lot with the fans on Twitter, and it kind of felt like Lindor and Steve Cohen were sort of negotiating on Twitter for everyone to see, and I thought that was kind of funny, just because I've never seen that before. You've never seen like public negotiations like that, where Lindor, there was a report, or Steve Cohen, I think, tweeted that they had offered Lindor a 10-year, $325 million deal, and then Lindor quoted that tweet basically saying, "I'm not going to sign that." And then a couple hours later, Lindor had all of a sudden had a new deal. And so I thought that was really, really funny and pretty interesting, honestly. Lindor is going to be entering his prime, and it's just, I like the deal. I think it's a good deal for the Mets. I think the Mets are going to be a good team for the next few years, and I think that it is I just think it will be just so funny to watch this contract age, Trevor Bauer, I think, has a good sort of idea of what he wants to do, and Bauer is, I think, sort of treating himself like a mercenary right now, where he's like, oh, I want to sign a short-term deal, that way I can go somewhere else if I'm not happy, or if this team can't offer me the amount of money that other pitchers that are at my caliber are getting paid during free agency, that he can then leave and then go to that different team, or a different team, and make more money. Whereas Lindor is like, well, I want to get want to make sure that I lock up money right now. And so like those are the two kind of philosophies. And I think Bauer's is a newer philosophy, whereas you've seen contracts or massive contracts, like for example, Alex Rodriguez's contract about 10 or 15 years ago, where he signed with the Rangers for, I think it was $240 million, the biggest contract of all time at that point in time, or something like that. It was kind of crazy. His deal was like the biggest deal of all time, and then all of a sudden, now everybody is getting kind of paid that kind of huge amount of money. And so Lindor's deal ends in it ends in 2031, and it is so April 1st is July 1st is an unofficial day that that Bobby Bonilla will or gets paid. So he last played for the Mets he last played for the Mets in 1999, and last played in the majors for the Cardinals in 2001. But he's still going to be paid by the Mets until 2035, when he's going to be 72 years old. He had a second deferred contract with the Mets that paid him $1 million for every year of his contract. And he also had one with the Orioles that paid him $500,000 a year for 25 years, and those payments began in 2004. So basically, Bobby Bonilla is going to be paid, still being paid by the Mets for a few years after Francisco Lindor is done playing. At least he might be done playing baseball at that point in time, or he might just be, he might still be in the league, but his contract will be up for a long time. And he has a 15-team no trade clause. Lindor does. From 2021 through 2025, and he has a full no-trade clause from 2026 through the remainder of his year. $50 million of it is deferred, and he will be paid $5 million a year after 2031, from 2032 through 2041. So I think that it's like his contract and this negotiation was pretty interesting, because Steve Cohen didn't want to go over the $325 million for the contract, and technically, with that $50 million deferred for the next 10 years, that I don't think that he did go over. Yeah, he definitely did not go over his own cap, because he wanted to pay $325 million. And Lindor wanted more money than Tatis got. And so with the deferments, Lindor's deal is actually only worth a little bit of that money. He's not going to be making as much money on a per year basis because of those deferments, but he will still be paid the remainder amount of his money after his contract is up. So I mean, it's really just going to depend on how much more baseball Lindor wants to play once his contract's up. But I'd say that he's in a very good spot in his life after this contract is up, and even for the next 10 years after that. But I like the deal for the Mets, because I think that the Mets have a really good shot at winning the World Series over the next couple years, with guys like DeGrom and Thor, Noah Syndergaard, and Marcus Stroman, and they have a decent young core. I think that the Mets might be a piece or two away, and they might end up beating the heck out of the Padres and vice versa for the next few years, because I think both of these teams are very good teams. I mean, at least for the next couple of years. at least in the National League. And when you look at these kinds of deals, Lindor's deal is he's going to be paid $27 million every year except for next year. Next year, his contract will be $48 million because of the technically the signing bonus and everything, plus his and then plus his actual salary. So that's how much yearly cash he will be making based on his salary. But on the payroll, he'll only have $34 million. So he'll make that money. He'll make his signing bonus money right away, and then every year after that, $2.1 million of that signing bonus will be added onto the payroll for the Mets. And by the time his contract is up, his contract is worth $341 million, but by the time his contract ends in 2031, he will have made $313.3 million of his deal, and then after that, he goes into his deferments and stuff like that. And when you look at Albert Pujols' contract, he does have a full no trade clause and he had a whole bunch of incentives as well. When he hit 3,000, when he got his 3,000 hit, he got $3 million bonus. If he hit a home run record, he would have gotten $7 million. He got an annual award bonus of $875,000 and $10 million of personal service contract paid after after his playing contract expires. So basically, he gets about $10 million to use on like house cleaners and drivers and security or something like that. If he made an All-Star game, that's an extra $50,000. World Series MVP, he would get $100,000. If he got first place in the MVP voting, he would have gotten $500,000. If he got second or third, it would have been $75,000. And the reason that I don't have any information yet on Lindor's new deal is because, other than the deferments and the no trade clause, is that his contract is just basically not. His contract hasn't been fully released with all of the details, like all the bonuses and incentives and things like that just yet, because it was signed just a few days ago. So things like these kind of come out later in the contract or when the contract might actually start, things like that. But for right now, Lindor is only going to be making $22 million this year because he's still under arbitration this year. And then after that, he'll in 2022, he'll start making a whole lot more money. Even though $22.3 million is still a whole lot of money. But he's going to be making $34 million every year. It's not like Tatis's deal where he has to kind of work or after a few years it goes up, and then after a few more years it goes up again. Lindor's deal is kind of just like, all right, you're going to be making $34 million every year for the next few years, sort of deal. And so I mean, it's definitely going to be super interesting to see if he re-signs after 2032. And I mean, he'll still be getting all of that deferred money after this year. In the past, when he was still with the Cleveland Indians, when he had signed in 2011, he made $2 million in his contract in 2015. That was his signing bonus to be in the minors when he made the bigs in 2015. It was $500,000, 2016 it was $540,000, 2017 $579,000, 2018 $600,000, and then 2019 he finally got to make arbitration, and the Indians had to pay him $10 million, and then in 2020 he had to in arbitration he made 17.5. And then last year his contract obviously wasn't as much as the $20 million that he was supposed to make. because of COVID and all of those. So he ended up actually only making about $6 million in 2020. So this is really his first year that he's actually going to be able to make some real money off of how good that he has been. I mean, he's about to make more money this season with the Cleveland Indians than in the 6 seasons that he made, or in the 6 seasons that he was with the Cleveland Indians. With those 6 seasons, he made $19 million with a $2.9 million signing bonus, which combines into a $21.9 million deal. This year alone, he'll be making $22.3 million with the Mets. I mean, and he's a 2-time Gold Glove Award winner. He's I would say that he's honestly better than Tatis right now, and then that's just because we haven't even seen Fernando Tatis Jr. play a full year yet. So I think that he's going to be. I think that this deal is good for Lindor and good for the Mets for probably the next 5 years or so. Don't go anywhere. In just a second, we're going to see how Lindor's deal is going to affect the shortstop market for the rest of the upcoming shortstops in free agency.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Alrighty, and welcome back into this segment of today's episode. This one, we're just going to be kind of looking at the free agency landscape for next year, after this season, for specifically shortstops, and seeing how that deal is going to sort of shake up how much these guys are going to be able to make, and obviously, you can't just go based off of the 2020 season, because guys like Corey Seager and Trevor Story were fantastic, whereas Lindor was okay, and then Correa and Javier Baez just had a down year. So if you kind of just gotta take that with a grain of salt, like. If you have a pitcher that, and David Sampson kind of used this example as well on the Levitard show last Thursday's episode for them, and he said that basically if your player had a really good season and say he's a pitcher and had a really good season, and so the front office is probably thinking, oh, this guy is going to be really good this year. Because of how much or at how good he was the previous season, and if your guy had a down year, say he was like a right-handed hitting outfielder, you're thinking, oh well, you can't just take 60-game sample is a super small sample size. Like if he's Christian Yelich, you're like, oh, he's definitely gonna bounce back this year. Like he can hit. He can hit what he hit, like I think it was like around like low 200, like almost the Mendoza line, if I'm remembering correctly, what he hit last year. If he can hit that for 60 games and still hit above 300 for the year, because that's just the kind of talent that the guy has. So you kind of just have to take what happened last year with a grain of salt, and then kind of go into this one with a this season and this free agency with more of an open mind. And then use this season and then like the 2017 through 2019 season as well to see really who he is. So you have Javier Baez, who has a 116 OPS plus from 2017 to 2019, and then in 2020 he was the weakest regular hitter in the National League, and he blamed it both on a lack of access to in-game video and a lack of fans in the seats. It didn't affect his defense either. He's still one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball for the last few years. And then you have guys like Carlos Correa, who is going to be 27 in 2022. Javier Baez is going to be 29 next year. Correa obviously was the first overall pick in 2012, and he has done a great job since making it to the big leagues, and is one of the few players that have been worthy of that number one overall pick. Obviously picks don't go all the way, or don't always work out, especially first round picks, and there's always that pressure there's always just so much more pressure when you are the number one pick. And he has had a variety of injuries since 2012, but he has had more than 500 plate appearances in a season, but he's only had more than 500 plate appearances in one season in 2016, where he had over 600, and he's still got a career OPS plus of 126. And 2020 season, he was below average to like almost just not having a great year. He did have a really strong postseason where he had 6 home runs, and so he is a very consistent hitter. He's a very good player. Like there's no doubt about that. He's a very good player. And Houston did offer him a 6-year, $120 million deal recently, although he did not appreciate that offer at all. And doesn't really want to negotiate in season, so he did turn down that offer, and he's probably just going to go and test free agency. I think that he'll probably be back with the Astros in 2022. That's my guess, but I don't know if he is really going to be able to get back there. And then Corey Seager, he's going to be 28 in 2022. In 2016 and 2017, he really looked like he was going to be a superstar in this league. But he had a hip surgery and an elbow surgery in 2018 that just kind of limited his impact in 2019. And then in 2020, he was back to who he was as a player prior to his injuries. In 2020, he had a 152 OPS plus and hit 8 home runs on the Dodgers' run all the way to the title, and was named the MVP of both the NLCS and the World Series. And it's kind of a long shot that he could be a third baseman, but he's a really good defender at shortstop. I think if he stays with the Dodgers, once Justin Turner retires or signs with a different team, Turner is getting up there in age that they'll probably move him over to third base. There's really nothing going on the extension rumor for him. The Dodgers have reportedly made efforts to get a deal done, but there really hasn't been much talk. And they also have to figure out what they're going to do with guys like Cody Bellinger and Walker Buehler in the next few seasons. But Mookie Betts is locked up for the next decade. That is a contract that I did forget to talk about a little bit in the last segment. But Mookie Betts has signed a very big deal as just this past, or not this past off season, but the off season and before that. The Dodgers have a lot of young talent, and there might not be enough money to keep everybody there. I think that one of the guys that's probably going to be gone, maybe not after this season, but probably after the 2022 season, is Trevor Bauer. just because the way his contract is structured is it's front loaded. And so he's getting most of his money in the first 2 years, and then in the third year, if he were to opt into his player option, it would not be nearly as much money. So I mean, the Dodgers have a lot of money tied up in a few players, and so they're gonna have to sort of pick who they're gonna want to have they might be able to keep both Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager, as well as Walker Buehler, but there's going to be a lot of they're going to have to do a lot of bookkeeping magic, I think, to be able to keep all three of those guys. Up next is Trevor Story. He's 28 this year. He'll be 29 in 2022. And he's one of the best all-around shortstops in the game. He has had a OPS plus of over 122 over the past 3 years, while also being one of the best defenders at the position, adding value on the bases too. And only 7 players have stolen more bases during from 2018 through 2020. He's stolen 65 bases since then, and he has he has the average home road split that you would expect from a Rockies player, where he obviously hits a lot better at Coors Field in Colorado, but he's still a decent player outside of that. I mean, DJ LeMahieu is a very good example of somebody that goes to a different place. He's with the Yankees right now. Goes to a different place and is still just as good. So, I mean, definitely playing Colorado helps you hit the ball a little bit better. With the thin air, the ball tends to travel a little bit farther. So, there is that. But there is it would be a surprise if Trevor Story made it through this year without being traded. Because there's really just nothing that is left for them, to be there. There's really nothing left for Trevor Story to really want after what happened with Nolan Arenado, and the fiasco that surrounded him during all of last season, and then also during the offseason as well. And Trevor Story, unfortunately, always had to answer the questions about, well, what do you think about this and this, about Nolan Arenado might be traded to this team? What are your thoughts on that? And he kind of has to say, well, if he gets traded, he gets traded. There's nothing that he can do or control with that. I do think that he'll probably be traded this season. I just don't know who or where. Because I just don't know who or where it would trade for him, mostly because of things all the contenders I think are kind of have shortstop locked up. Maybe potentially the Yankees, but the Braves have Dansby Swanson. The Dodgers have Corey Seager. The Padres have Fernando Tatis Jr. The Mets have Francisco Lindor, who we've been talking about. Maybe to an American League team. But the Twins traded for Aldernon Simmons. Signed Aldernon Simmons, so they have a good shortstop. I would say that maybe the team that needs a shortstop the most right now would be the Reds. After Eugenio Suarez struggled quite a bit after opening day. So I think if the Reds are still really in the hunt, I'd say that the Reds might trade for Trevor Story if they are, but I don't know. I don't think a contender, really any of the contenders really need a shortstop right now, at least during this season. So it's going to be interesting to see if he gets traded where he'll go. But I'd say that Trevor Story's time in Colorado is probably done after this. I would definitely say that it's probably done. I mean, there are a few interested teams in some shortstops. There are teams like actually no, not even the Yankees, because the Yankees have Gleyber Torres at shortstop. So I doubt that the Yankees would even trade for him. So if you guys know of a team that would be a good fit for Trevor Story, just reach out to me on Twitter at Patrick Kenny, or even reach us at our own Twitter at GSMC Baseball. And if you have a good trade idea and a good trade suggestion for Trevor Story, let us know so we can talk about it on an upcoming podcast, give you some credit. There are a few teams that are going to need some shortstops, and there are some ways that you could look at some of these shortstops. Algernon Simmons might re-sign with the Twins. There are a few teams that do need shortstops, but I wouldn't say that any team really needs a shortstop. Maybe the Brewers. I think that Trevor Story might get traded to the Brewers. I think that would be a good fit for them. They are a contender, and they do kind of need a few extra pieces, I think, to compete with not necessarily the Cardinals, but teams out in the NL East, and like the Dodgers and the Padres out in the NL West. There are some teams that could definitely add a one of these guys, but for the most part, I think that I think most of these guys are going to re-sign. I think Javier Baez is probably going to re-sign with the Cubs. I think Corey Seager re-signs with the Dodgers. I think Trevor Story gets traded at the deadline, probably to the Brewers. Maybe even to the Rangers. I feel like the Rangers could offer him a bunch of money, and they need somebody to. The Rangers need somebody to help fill the seats in their new stadium, and I think that Carlos Correa is probably going to either re-sign with the Astros, which I think is the most likely thing. But I think if he goes anywhere, I think he'll probably leave leave the Astros, and I think he might go up to Detroit because AJ Hinch is up in Detroit, and the Tigers are at least off to a pretty good start, and I think that they have I think that in maybe a year, maybe two, that the Tigers are going to be a very, very good team for a few years after that. So I'm going to end this segment a little bit short, just because we have a pretty long and deep topic to get into next. We're going to be talking about how Major League Baseball is moving the All-Star Game to, or they don't know where they're going to move it yet, but it does follow some pretty interesting, to say the least, laws enacted by Georgia here just a few days ago. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a second.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, guys. So this is a very interesting subject. So if you aren't aware and you don't really pay attention to politics that much, Georgia has introduced and has implemented a new voting law. And so the New York Times went through the voting law and has given an article and also like a little sort of cheat sheet that has basically given all of the new details of that. I'm going to go over the Atlanta Braves statement after Major League Baseball decided to move the All-Star game, and I will also be going over Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia and his response on Twitter. And then if we have any more time, I might give my own thoughts on that, but I'm going to try and stay away from that. So basically, the most significant voted changes to voting in the state are written on the New York Times. You can find it pretty easy under politics on the New York Times page on online. And so basically, voters are now going to have less time to request an absentee ballot. There are new stricter requirements for IDs for getting an absentee ballot. It is now illegal for elected officials to mail out an absentee ballot applications to all voters. Drop boxes still exist, but it is going to be very hard. It's going to be very difficult to find them now. They're going to shrink the places where they do exist. Mobile voting centers, basically like a pop-up building. If you went to school in the late 2000s, and you might have known or seen like a sort of a building, like a trailer or an RV kind of thing, kind of pop up right outside your school, and some people may have had to take a class or two, or may have had a class in there. They're basically banned now. Early voting is expanded in smaller counties, but not more populated ones like the county that Atlanta is in. And offering food or water to voters waiting in lines are now misdemeanor charges if you are caught giving water or food, like some snacks or something, to people who are waiting in those very long lines. If you go to the wrong polling place, it will be even harder to vote. So if you're supposed to go to a certain polling place inside your zip code and you accidentally go to one that is just outside your zip code, it's basically going to be even harder to vote. If election problems arise, which is a common occurrence, it's going to be even more difficult to now extend voting hours. With a mix of changes to vote counting, high turnout elections will probably mean a very long wait for results. And then election officials can no longer accept third-party funding. This is in parentheses, a measure that nods to right-wing conspiracy theories. Up next is, with an eye toward voter fraud, the state attorney general will manage an election hotline. The Republican-controlled legislature has now more control over the state election board. And the Secretary of State is removed as a voting member of the state election board. Then the GOP-led legislature is empowered to suspend county election officials. And runoff elections will happen a lot faster now and could be a lot harder to manage. Now that's just the little screen, or like the little bullet point notes. For that, if we have a little bit more time, we're going to go into that. But MLB has moved the All-Star game from Atlanta. They have not given a place yet. They are looking at, and this is from an article on the USA Today. They are looking at a few places. But the emergence of the Players Alliance kept black voices in the game, even if they're no longer on the field. a crucial coalition at a time. African American players comprised just 8% of active players. In September, MLB and MLB Players Association donated $10 million to the Players Alliance to further black representation in baseball. Major League Baseball added another $1 million donation of equipment and supplies to help fuel the Alliance's winter tour of disadvantaged neighborhoods as the COVID-19 pandemic surged. And the spirit of collaboration will hopefully prevail in making a thoughtful decision for the All-Star Game in 2021. And so there are a few suggestions from this article by Gabe Lackes of USA Today. One is Milwaukee. In a year meant to honor Hank Aaron, who passed away in January, the only place potentially on par with Atlanta is Aaron's first and last baseball home, where he played 12 seasons before the Braves departed for Atlanta, and the final season with Bud Selig's Brewers before Bud Selig became the commissioner. The next one is Minneapolis. There's no bonus points for being the first entry to relieve a heavily workshopped statement on a sensitive topic, yet for what it's worth, in the grim hours and days after George Floyd's death, it was the Twins who weighed in first on the killing, 2 days before any other club, and 6 days before the league itself did the same. It was also one of just 12 teams who dared to mention George Floyd by name, and the other 18 dancing away from the subject to bathe in the vinaigrette of a word salad. These are not my words, by the way. I am just reading this article to kind of give you all the reasons for this from this article. And so that is a place. And another one is the Chicago White Sox field at Guaranteed Rate Field. It was recently renovated and has some pretty good food for the fans that would be able to attend, and so that is another place that could potentially happen. But like I said earlier, like there's no way that there is any that there's going to be a real that there has been an announcement yet. Major League Baseball has decided to move the game so far, but they have yet to actually release, or they have yet to actually decide on a new place to do it. Another place that could potentially be is Baltimore. The Baltimore Camden Yards is a beautiful baseball park, and Baltimore could use some love. Attendance fell drastically at Oriole Park from $2.4 million in attendance in 2014 and to 1.3 million in 2019. Basically for a bunch of factors in the area, economic factors, diminishing population in Baltimore, and a perception of security issues after the protest in the wake of Freddie Gray's death in police custody in 2015. So the Orioles are a good spot as well, just because they could use some love. Another place that I could potentially see would be, I guess, I mean those are some very good places, but one that I think that Major League Baseball might move it to kind of help them out would be the Rangers' new facility. They did get to host the World Series last year, and some other games in the bubble. In Major League Baseball's bubble, but I think that this is probably one of the more likely options, just because with COVID-19 happening, the Rangers kind of got they sort of got shifted out of their money, or out of some of the money that they would have gotten had there not been a global pandemic that kind of shut everything down. So I think that would be another possibility. And there is just a very good possibility that happens. So Major League Baseball did release a statement regarding the 2021 All-Star Game, and it reads as follows. From the Commissioner of Baseball, Robert D. Manfred Jr., issued the following statement regarding the 2021 All-Star Game. Quote, over the last week, we have engaged in thoughtful conversation with clubs, former players, and the Players Association and the Players Alliance, among others, to listen to their views. I have decided that the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport is by relocating this year's All-Star Game and Major League Baseball draft. The Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. In 2020, Major League Baseball became the first professional sports league to join the nonpartisan Civic Alliance to help build a future in which everyone participates in the shaping of the United States. We proudly used our platform to encourage baseball fans and communities throughout our country to perform their civic duty and actively participate in the voting process. Fair access to voting continues to have our game's unwavering support. We will continue with our plans to celebrate the memory of Hank Aaron during this season's All-Star festivities. In addition, Major League Baseball planned investments to support local communities in Atlanta as part of our All-Star legacy projects will move forward. We are finalizing a new host city, and details will be announced shortly. It has yet to be announced as of me recording this episode at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, April 3rd, but it is relatively recent. The Atlanta Braves also released a statement as well, and I will read that right here. And their statement has gotten quite a bit of backlash, and you might see why after I read this. The Atlanta Braves press release goes as follows. The Atlanta Braves are deeply disappointed by the decision of Major League Baseball to move its 2021 All-Star Game. This was neither our decision nor our recommendation, and we are saddened that the fans will not be able to see this event in our city. The Braves organization will continue to stress the importance of equal voting opportunity, and we had hoped our city could use this event as a platform to enhance the discussion. Our city has always been known as a uniter in divided times, and we will miss the opportunity to address issues that are important to our community. Unfortunately, businesses, employees, and fans in Georgia are the victims of this decision. We will continue to support the community legacy projects which have been planned and are in progress. That statement has gotten a lot of backlash. And it doesn't seem like the Braves are. It seems like the Braves are reacting pretty emotionally, at least in this statement, and I understand why. And it's not their fault, but Major League Baseball has decided to take a stand against voter suppression, and while I did not read anything on that article that really focuses on the voter suppression aspect of it, it does seem, at least through through those bullet points that I read, that Georgia is trying to make it a little bit harder to vote in their state. And that is the biggest reason, and that's the only reason why Major League Baseball decided to move the game. And now I am going to read Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia and his statement on Twitter that he has tweeted out, that he tweeted yesterday. Okay, so it goes as such. Today, Major League Baseball caved to fear, political opportunism, and liberal lies. Georgians and all Americans should fully understand what the MLB's knee-jerk decision means. Cancel culture and woke political activists are coming for every aspect of your life, sports included. If the left doesn't agree with you, facts and the truth do not matter. This attack on our state is the direct result of repentant lies from Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams about a bill that expands access to the ballot box and ensures the integrity of our elections. I will not back down. Georgians will not be bullied. We will continue to stand up for secure, accessible, fair elections. Earlier today, I spoke with the leadership of the Atlanta Braves, who informed me they do not support Major League Baseball's decision. So that is a statement, to say the very least. That is definitely a statement. And I do not know enough of I do not know enough about the bill to speak on behalf of the bill. And I will say that, and I want to make that very clear. I will, however, say that the governor's response seems, at least to me, to be childish at the very least. If he really wanted the ballots to be secure after moving forward, there have been reports that this was the most secure election in United States history. And Georgia played a major part in that, and Atlanta played a major part in that. And for that, I am sorry that the Braves will not get to host this year's All-Star Game, especially after the passing of the great Hank Aaron. This is definitely a very interesting subject to talk about, because it's hard to find it's hard to present both sides without coming across bias. I think that Major League Baseball has probably done the right thing in their eyes, and I think that the governor's response was at best childish. I am disappointed in their governor's response, but from what I did read from the New York Times, it seems like it is a fair it is a fair response by Major League Baseball, and I see this. I see the governor of Georgia right now, and he's just kind of gaslighting and fear mongering the people of Twitter right now, to claim that cancel culture is coming for sports, and it's not. Cancel culture isn't a real thing. It's not a real thing. It's now, or cancel. What is viewed as cancel culture is just people actually being is being called out on doing things that are wrong and have always been wrong, but now people are coming forward. That is what cancel culture is actually. It's not anything that is devious or ran by one side of the aisle, if there even are sides of the aisle. I think for the most part, I would say that the majority of our listeners are American, and that there, I personally, I do not believe that there are sides. I think that we are all supposed to be one nation that works to better ourselves. And I think that baseball is doing what they feel to be right here. And I think that they are garnering a lot of support for doing this decision. And while I do feel bad for the Atlanta Braves organization for not getting to host such a special occurrence because of something that was ultimately out of their control, we have seen we have seen reactions like this in the past. And most recently, I think that comes to my mind is the SEC decided not to host any SEC-sanctioned events in the state of Mississippi until they decided to change their flag. And these events do bring quite a bit of money to the community, but the one thing I saw Bomani Jones of ESPN tweet, and he brought up a very good point, because somebody said that they are going to lose a lot of money here. And Bomani Jones, I thought, brought up a very good point, because he said the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia are not going to lose any money here because they never had it in the first place. They were projected to make money here, but they did not have the event, so they cannot lose something that they do not have. So this, and I think that's a very, very good point. There are some very good voices out there on Twitter that I encourage everybody who's listening to go and check out. Bomani Jones is one. Mina Kimes of ESPN is another. Dominique Foxworth of ESPN. Emmanuel Acho of Fox Sports. And the list goes on of very good voices in sports media that are talking about this. Marcus Stroman of the Mets is another very good one. So I encourage you all to go and follow their Twitters so you can educate yourself more about this. Go to the New York Times article and read that thoroughly so you can be informed on this as well. With that being said, my name is Patrick Kenny. Thank you all for listening. Follow us at GSMC Baseball. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Twitter. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.